So yay, so nice to meet you and to hang out with you. How are your cats? I wanted to ask you first
Oh,
of
my cats are great. They're
yeah,
great. I lock them out of this room when I'm on Zoom because otherwise they jump all over the desk and knock the lamp over.
of course. Uh,
Um, but yeah, I'm obsessed with them.
yeah. And so you're living in Queens.
Yeah, I live in Queens, New York. Have you been to New York?
I was in New York when I was 21, so a long time ago, and we kind of I just went shopping and ate food and stayed around.
Yeah,
Not even sure where we were staying, but yeah,
yeah. Most people don't even like go to Queens when they visit New York for the first time because it's one of the five boroughs and it's like a more of a sleepy borough compared to the others, but
yeah.
it's known for being the most ethnically diverse and it's a big lots of immigrant communities here.
Wow, that's so interesting because I was actually born in East London in Hackney, and in the
Oh,
80s, that was the most ethnically diverse place in the world.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's been more gentrified now, so it's different. But yeah, so I just found that such a rich like way to live, just very
Yeah.
vibrant.
Yeah, I really love where we live. And our neighborhood specifically is supposedly the most or one of the most diverse neighborhoods of the borough.
So
It's
cool.
majority immigrant and it's um yeah, I think it's kind of unique for New York City neighborhoods where like all the groups tend to uh, it- they may or may not actually socialize together, but everybody goes to the same restaurants and the same park, and it's just very mixed.
Yeah, that's so special. That's
Yeah,
so great.
yeah,
Cool, lots of great food.
yes, yes. Yeah.
Cool. So let
and,
me.
and
Uh,
where? Sorry, where exactly are you living? You're
so I was living in Bali, and I have just come home to
oh,
Ireland. Yeah,
oh my gosh,
yeah, I
what
was
an
there.
experience that must be.
It's amazing. So I'm hoping to head back there in a few months, but at the moment I'm in Ireland for the summer,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, I mean, we don't get actual real live summers, but the nature here and the people and my friends and family is just having a really wholesome, beautiful
Oh,
time.
that's so nice. I've never been to Ireland. I would like to go. The photos I've seen of the landscapes are so beautiful.
I think you'd really like it. It's the nature and the people. It's not the weather that you come from, but the beaches, I mean, are insane. It's just so stunning and really untouched, very wild and rugged. And then the people are a bit like that as well, right? Just like loads of fun and
Yeah.
wild. I think we're all
That's
quite
such a
wild.
rich literary culture. I know.
Of course, yeah. So yeah, definitely let me know if you're coming.
Oh yeah, thank you. I'll keep that in mind.
So yeah, what I am dying to talk to you about also, amongst other things, is your journey with your health and well-being. And I wanted to start with asking you what specific symptoms you had, like, and that
Mhm.
led you to keep searching and eventually find this journey that we both share.
Yeah, yeah. So like a lot of people I know can relate to now that I am where I am in my journey, far along in it, I can look back and say there have been, a whole lot of different symptoms that are all related to, they're all just different manifestations of nervous system stress. But the one that got me into my whole healing journey was migraines, because that was the one that was getting in the way of my life, the most front and center. And it was just like taking me out of, having to cancel days of work and stuff like that. So migraines was like the singular thing that brought me into um, finding out about mind body healing and all of that stuff.
Wow. And so I can completely relate to everything you're saying about so many different symptoms, but then there being like one or two that were just kind of seemed like the dominating symptoms and the ones that would really take you out.
Yeah.
And did you have migraines since you were really young, or they just
No,
came out?
no, not at all. And also, I think this is kind of interesting. I don't know anyone else in my close family that ever has had a migraine, because a lot of people are like, oh, it's genetic and, there's no way around it. It just gets passed down. Well, that certainly was not the case for me, because nobody in my family gets migraines, at least that I know of, that's close enough that I would know about it.
Mm.
Um, but so I got my very first headache, and I remember it because it was out of the ordinary for me. And it was, so my prior career, as you know, I now work as a chronic pain recovery therapist and coach, but it wasn't that long ago that I was in a completely different career, and I was a video editor working in reality television for over a decade.
By the way, my brother has that exact job. This is
You're
hilarious.
kidding.
Yeah,
That's so funny. Oh my gosh, that's really wild.
yeah.
Um, so it was my very, like, I'd gotten into editing a little bit, but when I got my first job that was for, a real commercial client, it was real money, or quote unquote real job. And it was the first job that was in the, reality style genre, which is super, super fast paced. It's like tons of pressure. And what also, on that first day of that first job, I was using a different software to the one I was used to. So it was just like a massive stress bomb. And it was in the middle of that first day, I got this terrible headache because I was so stressed out. And I remember just kind of feeling really freaked out and stumbling out of the office. And I wasn't that familiar with the neighborhood I was in. So it's like I had to find a drugstore. I had never taken any painkillers other than just ibuprofen before that. And I was like, I'm going to need something stronger. So I was searching the painkiller section, and I saw something with the word migraine on it. It was Excedrin. So I'll try this. And that was the beginning of it.
Right. So you didn't have childhood mysterious symptoms or anything. You were kind of like,
In the vein of looking back, I had other symptoms in childhood, but they weren't headaches. First of all, they were not at all headaches. And they weren't persistent enough or intrusive enough to really, be a thing.
interesting. That's so interesting. So to you, it kind of must have come out of the blue. And could you relate it to lifestyle, or where did you go from there?
I immediately made the stress connection because I think I've always been open to mind body connection type of stuff, and lots of people in my family are into holistic, ways of healing. And I just knew that I knew that I was panicking. Like I don't know if I was using the word anxiety at that point necessarily, although I might have been, because I had gone to therapy a little bit at that point. So I knew that I was that the headache went together with kind of hyperventilating and blanking out and freaking out. And that was very clear to me straight from the beginning. And I'd had other, I wasn't thinking about this at all at the time, but when I was a kid, I would get, not on a regular basis, but like, I do remember this one time I switched schools and went to a new school. I was really nervous, and I got a really bad stomach ache on the way to the new school. So, I knew that those kind of things were tied together.
Wow. So what did you do then with that situation? Like being in this stressful job, now having migraines, did you go down the conventional route of going to the doctor?
Not for a really long time, because I got that headache that one day, and then I probably didn't get another one for a really long time. So in the beginning, for probably a few years. The headaches were like, I did get other headaches after that, but it was very sporadic, not frequent. And it took a few years for them to become more frequent, and to the point when I started to think maybe I should get something other than a drugstore painkiller for this. And so I finally did go to see a neurologist, and they gave me Imitrex, which is a really, really common standard prescription pain medication for migraines. And it worked really well for me. It's a take as needed. It's not a take every day. But it worked really well for me. And so, that was just working for a while. And I still wasn't getting them all the time in those days. And I also had started going to psychotherapy at that point for other reasons, just because like none of my relationships were ever working out. That's why I went to therapy. But the therapist I was seeing, she was like oriented toward mind-body connection. She had no idea how to work with chronic pain. She knew the pain was connected to the stress, but she didn't know what to do about that just because she wasn't educated in that specifically. But yeah, so I went to see a neurologist just really to get the medication. And then I would just go back there every time I needed to refill my prescription. I had to change doctors a few times because here in the States, as you may know, our healthcare system's extremely messed up. And so I had to change health insurance a number of times. And each time I, had to see a different doctor. And so I saw a few different people who had different approaches. Most of them just, gave me the meds and that was it. One of them wanted me to get an MRI on my, or some kind of, or is it an MRI or a CAT scan? I'm not sure. They wanted me to get an X-ray of my brain to see if there was something physical there. But I was dead sure that that was not the issue. And even though I hadn't found like all of the mind-body education that helped me heal eventually, I just knew instinctively that could take me down a dark path. So I refused to get the scan. So yeah, I never really went like hardcore into the medical stuff because I didn't trust it, just kind of instinctively.
That's actually amazing. I know so many people and myself, I went hardcore down loads of routes, and yeah, like your instincts were correct.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for that, actually.
That's really beautiful. And so were you told anything else by the doctors? You didn't really go down that route. You didn't end up with lots of different narratives, because that can be a really common thing. Like you end up with these scary stories from different like well-meaning healthcare practitioners, and they can really stick.
Yeah. So yeah, just to continue on that a bit, my story it's a little bit opposite of what a lot of people's stories are, where a lot of people go down that medical route and get very caught up in the fear and the diagnoses. I knew that it was stress related, and each new doctor that I saw, I would say to them, look, I really think this is related to stress. And they'd be like, yeah, that's a part of it. And I'd say, okay, well, so how, like, what can I do with that part of it? What is there for me to do? And they would just say, oh, just meditate and go to therapy. And that's really not specific enough to be helpful in the least. So my frustration was that I knew what the problem was, but no one that I saw in the medical field, nor my therapist really, although she had this mind-body orientation, but no one that I saw knew how to direct me toward the tools that would actually help me with this.
Right. Yeah. So they're making the connection. It's stress. You meditate. Like, even I did breath work before, but no one could give you these specific tools that would literally just like get the job done.
Right. They didn't know that the specific tools existed, and it's not their fault that they didn't know.
Right.
And speaking of other symptoms, so another symptom that I now, see as just kind of all part of the same thing is that for a long time I was getting recurring urinary tract infections and yeast infections and pelvic pain during sex, like just a lot of stress related stuff going on in the pelvic region, specifically associated with sex. And I think it's important to talk about this because I'm feeling a little like nervous talking about it because it's so culturally taboo to talk about it. But that was one of my areas of stress symptoms. And with that too, I was going to the gynecologist a lot because there was a period of time when this was just a very troublesome problem. And I kept saying to my gynecologist, like, I really think these UTIs are related to stress and trauma. And she'd say, yeah, there's probably a connection there. And just didn't know how to help me further with that. And it was so frustrating to me because it was like I could see a part of the solution, but no one was able to offer me the complementary puzzle piece, so to speak.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm just love everything you're sharing. Thank you so much for being so open. I also, after a car crash and I lost a friend to suicide, there was a few big traumas. And then I got this UTI thing and I was like on antibiotics consistently. And it wasn't until a few years later when I found the mind body connection that I realized, it was really serious. The what do they call it? Like bladder syndrome.
Yeah.
And I was like leaking, like not being able to hold in my pee, like peeing like 7 times a night. But historically I had period pain.
Me too.
Right?
Yes, that was another one I forgot when I was in my 20s. Really, really bad. Yeah.
Like passing out, vomiting, like so serious. And I had all the scans, like from a teenager, all the scans, everything. And it was always like, oh, you'll grow out of it. Just ignore it. You'll grow out of it. Have a baby.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But yeah, actually after years and years, yeah, it's this mind body connection. And
yeah, absolutely.
The stress.
Absolutely. And that's an interesting one. As I said, I also used to have really debilitating menstrual pain, and looking back, it was so similar to the migraines, like, because both of those symptoms at different points in my life would have me locking myself in a room at work and lying on the floor, taking painkillers, waiting hours for it to pass, hoping nobody was looking for me at work. And now working as a therapist with clients who are dealing with chronic pain issues, a lot of my uterus bearing clients do talk about having very difficult menstrual cycles, and not all of them connect, even if they're working on mind body issues, people don't always connect it to that because there's this cultural idea that your menstrual cycle is supposed to be miserable, which I think is total BS.
Oh my God. The first breakthrough I had with my menstrual cycle pain was, have you heard of the Red School?
No, but it sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, there are these rad women who are teaching all this menstrual cycle awareness. Oh, cool. And one of them is a bit older. She teaches a lot about menopause, and the other woman, I forget what their names are, but they wrote a book called Wild Power as well, which
I'm writing it down because I need to find this.
The first part of their hormone harmony course that I did was to write down your thoughts about your period.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, like the thoughts and the words that you use to describe your period. And immediately my mind was blown because, like, growing up as a teenager, like in my 20s, everything was just like, oh shit, you've got your period. Oh yeah. No. Bummer. I was like taking the contraceptive pill continuously, just not giving myself a period. It was like so fearful, so negative.
So shame drenched.
So much shame. Like the amount of times I would like leak, you know, it was like the worst thing. I remember wearing white trousers at a disco once, and we were all like really getting really hammered as teenagers, Irish teenagers, just got drunk. That's what we did. And then realizing at the end of the disco, I had period pain, and I mean, a period stain, and the shame, the horror that someone might have seen that. And so all of that, that's just this, right, this like building all this stress.
Totally. I mean, the level that a story that comes to my mind, I was very fortunate in that when I first got my period, my mother she actually threw a little party for me with a few other women and, you know, friends of hers and friends of mine. So that was a very positive message. But she told me that when she first got her period and told her mother slapped her in the face, and that was just a tradition that her mom, you know, passed down from her mother. I mean, how, like,
Whoa.
what message does that send to your nervous system about your innate menstrual cycle? It's pretty frightening and terrible.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I know. I think that for my grandmother, and even some of my mother's generation, they said like they thought they were dying.
Mm.
You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
so that level of secrecy and shame about like
Yes.
this huge, what it means to be a woman, I have found like is a massive part of my mind body journey, my healing journey. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you use the word secrecy, because I'm just writing down the words secrecy, shame, and fear. Those are by far some of the most common themes that I see working with clients that are hooked into the chronic pain cycle. And I can completely relate to that myself.
Oh my God, I can completely relate to that. They are really, really, like, they're big ones. They have been big ones for me in my childhood. I was just thinking or writing recently about hiding when I hurt myself, and hiding like, so
Wow.
I got so I didn't want to stress other people out obviously around me, so I decided within myself to like not be too bothersome to my caretakers, and I didn't ask for help. I disconnected from my needs. And like I was just remembering when I would like I'd hurt myself and I'd hide it, or didn't know. I wet myself once when I was like 9 years old. I like there was people around, I just couldn't ask for help. I was just stuck in this really intense, stressful cycle of those words actually that
Yes.
you described, like secrecy, hiding, not wanting to be too exposed, like being exposed, like so being exposed felt really scary, like it wasn't safe.
Yeah, it's so interesting sharing these stories, right? We learn so much from each other and we can see more about our own patterns. Hearing your experience, I'm thinking, well, my experience was different from that in one aspect, in that my mom loved to take care of my physical needs. If I ever got, you know, a scrape or a cut, or, I mean, the fear would come because she would overreact to it so much and, you know, take me to the doctor for the most minor thing. So I did go to her for those physical needs, but something that she, you know, because of her own upbringing and issues and history, something she didn't deal with well was if I would be sad and crying. And so my memories of hiding in childhood would be locking myself in my room to cry alone. And all of those hiding experiences, we're alone with our pain, you know, whether it's physical, emotional, or usually both. And we have to contract around it to hold it because there's no one to help us release it safely.
Right. Can really, really, really relate. And then just this like pretending, I felt, because I was like highly sensitive, and just this cycle that we spoke about, this shame, secrecy, and silence. And I felt like I was putting a huge amount of pressure on myself then to like pretend to be well, or pretend to be just pretend to be whatever. Just
Yeah.
felt like I was kind of pretending. And it's just so much pressure. I would feel exhausted, and yeah.
It's so much physical and emotional pressure. And I heard someone say in some mind body interview, talk about like, imagine that feeling of when you're in some environment where you'd feel it's not appropriate to cry, but the tears are coming up. And what's that physical feeling of holding back the tears? And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's like exactly like the beginnings of a migraine to me.
So like feeling the pressure rise and then like holding it back, and that causes
Yeah.
the tension.
Yeah.
And with a migraine, they say like it's the contraction of like the blood vessels through this emotional contraction. The physical reaction is the blood vessels, and like not enough kind of blood then get into the brain. Is that?
I mean, yeah, that's one description of it. I mean, I think there's so many different ways. At the end of the day, they're all like metaphors, and whatever makes sense to you, makes sense to you. I think of it as my feelings are expanding and my fear is contracting around the feelings. And it's that tension that sends my nervous system into an excruciating place.
Yeah. And the pain is excruciating. My symptoms, main dominant symptoms, were fibromyalgia and IBS. And yeah, just like really, really excruciating, debilitating pain. And then with this not having any direct answers or explanations or even like these metaphors to understand it, it's a very dark place.
Yeah, it's scary.
So what helped you then? Where did you find your like tools, or who inspired you? Or
yeah, so the turning point came for me, and like so many, it's you kind of like hit rock bottom, and then you're like, this is not going to be my destiny, this is not going to be my life. So for me, I was working in TV for over a decade. I knew it was a super stressful environment that was not helping with the migraines. And after 10 years, I decided to leave that career, go back to school to become a therapist. And because I had some instinctive sense about mind-body connection, I thought like, okay, I'm leaving this high stress career. I'm going to an environment where it's encouraged to talk about feelings, and open up. So I bet the migraines are going to get better when I make this transition. But instead, they got way, way worse. And the way that I think about it has a lot to do with what we are just talking about. Is I got to grad school thinking like, oh, this is going to be the place where I feel free and safe and accepted, and I can talk about like all these things I've been embarrassed and secretive about and shameful and holding in. So I came there with like the pump was primed, like all my emotions were like so excited to just release all over the place. But when I got there, it's an academic environment, and I'm sure there's different environments in different schools, and different people react to different environments in different ways. But I personally did not really feel like so safe to just like open up and talk about my feelings in this particular academic environment. So I went there with like my emotion balloon was ready to burst. And then it was like, oh no, don't come out here. And that's the metaphor anyway, that makes sense to me about why my migraines got so out of control when I was in grad school. And it got to the point where I was getting migraines 2 to 3 times a week. So that was creating a lot of problems. I was having to miss class on occasion. I was having to miss days at my clinical internship, which were really important. And that, of course, was making me worry, like, when I get out of school, am I going to be able to do this career? Because I can't be canceling on therapy clients, once a week. That's not going to work. And on top of that, I was taking still taking Imitrex, which I still take on occasion, by the way. I don't get full-blown migraines anymore, but I still will take a painkiller sometimes. But
I'm just going to pause you right there. I'm going to close one of my windows because there's a bit of noise.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. I'll just get up and down in case I lose you. Yeah.
So with Imitrex, they, in the States anyway, they give you 9 pills per month and you can't exceed that. And I was getting way more than 9 migraines a month. So it was a very problematic situation. And so I had not really, surprisingly, up until that point, I hadn't really gone into like Googling migraine solutions. I was just, taking these painkillers and that was it. But when it got so out of control, then I started diving into Google, how do you get it rid, how do you cure migraines? What can you do? I went to yet another new neurologist, and because I was in university, I had access to the university's health center. So I went to their neurologist, and he was very well-meaning, but very out of date, old school guy. And he said, well, now that you're getting more than 9 headaches a month and you're exceeding the allotment of painkillers, you should really go on a daily painkiller medication. And I was like, this is not going to work for me. I have to find something else. So I was like, no, thank you. Left his office, was Googling like crazy. And with all of that Googling, I started getting advertisements in my social media feed for the app called Curable. Do you know about
Literally the same thing. I got a friend sent me the ad for Curable. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that was my entry point. And Curable, I think it had only existed for maybe 1 or 2 years at that point. I'm not exactly sure about that. I found it in 2018. And as soon as I started diving into it, I was like, this is the answer that I knew I needed all along, but I just didn't know where to find it. This is like the complementary puzzle piece to me knowing that my symptoms were stress related, and here's what to do about it now. And here's how to use meditation in a way that's really targeted toward the pain. Here's the psychoeducation that helps me really click into an understanding of what my pain is, why it's there, and how to talk to it. Here's how to journal with your pain. It's just like this whole toolkit. But the first click for me was understanding that pain is a danger signal. It's your nervous system's way of saying, help, I don't feel safe. And that was the first breakthrough for me. Because I was like, okay, I don't know how to turn pain off, but I do have some ideas about how to help myself feel safer. So that's something I can work with. And then it was down the rabbit hole from there.
Wow, I can completely relate to that as well. I also found Curable around that time, and different for me. Because I was already heavily involved in like therapy and self-development and breathwork and meditation, I hadn't instinctively made the stress connection, because I was like, if anybody, I've done more personal work than any of you people. If anybody doesn't have psychological problems, it's me. But it was really like, I love the word you use, the psychoeducation. It's the pain science for me. When I first discovered Curable, and they said in the pain science lesson that all pain comes from the brain, that if you break your arm, the messages go to your brain. I was like, and then the phantom leg, that someone without a leg can still experience pain, that the brain really is the center for pain. And literally I can remember that moment, that like my life changed forever.
It's so amazing. I got chills when you said that, and I just relate so much.
Yeah, it's amazing. And just learning that these real illnesses, these real pains, these real debilitating conditions, just like there's a root, like you can get down into the root and work from there.
Yeah. It's truly amazing. And I had some experiences in the early days of my recovery, because like there are a lot of these quick recovery stories out there, which I think are probably out there because they get people's attention, and it's like, oh, this is so motivating and can give me hope. But um it's not the experience that the majority of people have, and I think that's important for people to know, that there's zero things wrong with you if you're not having that quick recovery. The quick recovery has not at all been my experience. My recovery has spanned years at this point, and it's still in process, and my nervous system is just still unwinding itself. um but in those in that first year of my recovery, the primary tool I was using was Curable, which was so helpful. And I had some really, truly miraculous feeling experiences during that year. Like uh, several times I would have the experience of already being in a migraine. Like the migraine was already happening, the pain was already bad. And I would do an emotional release exercise with the app, and I'd feel the migraine melting completely away in real time. And it was just like, this is freaking magic. By the way, I don't have those experiences anymore at this stage that I'm in now. It's, just different things are happening now. But that was something I experienced several times in the early days. And I think that just got me so excited, because it was like, what the heck is this? This is miraculous.
That is amazing, and I can relate. It was 2 weeks into I found a Curable app, and being this like obsessive, high achieving, personality type, I got all the books. I read all the
Yeah,
books within like 2 weeks.
same.
Did all the app, like everything
Same.
Dr. Sarno's ever done or written. And then I walked down to my local shop, and now I had allergies my whole life, food intolerances, candida, and in recent years of me searching for solutions, I had been doing gluten-free, sugar-free, restrictive diets, and I was trapped in a hole of that. Like I was allergic to life. And within 2 weeks, so this is one of those like the miracle stories,
Yeah.
but it obviously has unfolded over longer time. But I walked to my local shop and I bought some cans of Guinness and also some Mars bars ice creams. And no one's seen me eat, like I had been on only eating the purest
Yeah.
of foods for so long. And I was like, there, took my cans of Guinness and my Mars bar ice creams to my friend's house. And they were like, what's happening to her? And I just drank the Guinness, ate the ice creams, and nothing happened.
Oh, that's so amazing. That sounds really fun
Like,
too.
before, if like a crumb of gluten got on my plate, I would be wiped out. I would be in bed with fibromyalgia, IBS. I was so ill, and I was just like, what the hell? And of course, then it's a journey. It's always a journey, because it is such a deep unpacking of ourselves. And I love that your Instagram holding you have healing is activism, because I really feel like this is like part of humans' evolution.
I do too.
Yeah, like
I really do.
this calming of our nervous system. We've all been like terrified of ourselves and each other, and we all have like passed down all these belief systems about what it means to be like gender belief systems and cultural belief systems to keep ourselves safe, and then it's all just like pinging around in our amygdala. So this like unfolding, like there can be these miraculous, and there are, I find with my clients and with myself, these miraculous kind of like jumps and leaps and big realizations. But for
Yeah.
sure, I relate to just this ongoing, this evolutionary kind of just like movement.
Yeah, I got chills hearing you speak just now because I mean, yeah, obviously, as you know, I completely feel the same way. I feel like this that nobody wants to have pain, and I would never wish it on anybody, and I wouldn't have wished it on myself. But it has been an invitation for me and so many other people into this journey of finding a different way to go through life that's different from that fear-based way of just fearing everything and trying to keep ourselves safe through hypervigilance all the time, which just leads to so much self-destruction and so much violence between people and groups. And it is this invitation to finding a more empowered way to go through life that's not based on fear. And I feel a little like dippy talking about it, but I mean, it is what this work brings you into.
I love what you just said, like not living through this fear-based program kind of anymore. And the invitation, I love those words that you're using, because when I was living in Bali, I like my period pain came back really bad when I was in a relationship that wasn't great, right? And so, and then just before I left Bali, I also like I never got headaches ever in my journey, but I started to get headaches and I got cold sores. And for me, these times are always an invitation for change. It's like something is not working, and whatever my desperation to not be alone or left by that partner, or my I needed to come home from Bali at that point. I needed to see my family. I needed to see my friends, but I was doing this like toughing it out pattern, this like, I don't need anyone, I am out here to prove or whatever. And then just melting, coming home and just melting and allowing people in, receiving. I was like, oh my God. And sometimes those belief systems are just so strong that it takes like that invitation by my body. It's just like, you can't keep functioning. You won't keep functioning like this. You need to receive, or you need to let go. Something needs to change.
Yeah, it's something that there's a colleague of mine that we love to talk about this together, that there are a lot of messages in Sarno's books in particular. And if anyone's listening to us who doesn't know who Sarno is, he wrote the Mind Body Prescription and a lot of other books about mind body connection. And in his books, he often talks about how like you don't need to change anything about your life to heal from chronic pain. You just need to journal and release the emotions. And for some people in some situations that might be true. And I've found in my life, like the changes that I've made because the pain was telling me this thing in your life needs to be changed, have been way more important than the pain relief, actually. It's like the relief from a situation in my life that wasn't working for me was so much more important and more impactful than just the pain reduction.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because someone posted actually in a Facebook group, a pain Facebook group. He said, I'm gonna leave my job because it's stressful. I know it's related to the pain. So does anyone have experience with leaving their job and then the pain going away? And it's like there's actually two things, because sometimes with the food, like you can change everything in your life, your relationships, your living situation, your food. This is what I said to him. But unless you change the beliefs and the chronic stress, then nothing will change. But then there's also the other side of that, which is what we're saying, is that also sometimes when the change is interlinked with a belief, with a changing in a belief.
Yeah.
And that's probably when it has the most effect then on really calming the nervous system down.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. And the way I think about it is, if you're leaving out of fear, and you're leaving because, oh, I need to just go hide in a cave, and you're fearful, then that's not going to help the symptoms. It may even ramp them up. But if you're leaving because my passion is actually to do something else, and this job has been squelching my passion, and I want to unleash my passion, that is going to have a positive impact on the mind and body.
I love that. That's so true. And actually, living, I would love to ask you, like, how important it is you feel to be like living your passion or living your kind of soul's purpose or your strengths, gifts, and talents, whatever language you like to use, but connected. How important you think that is to like pain?
I think it's everything, actually, because another metaphor that I use for chronic pain is like, it's a constriction of your life force. It's your fear is constricting around your life energy, your life force, your passion. And so I think it's everything to be living your passion. But I also want to add to that, like, that doesn't mean that if your passion is to quit your job and travel around the world performing, but you can't afford to do that right now, like, that doesn't mean that you're therefore doomed to stay in pain. You can live your passion in small ways. You can build up step by step. But if you are putting your energy into living your truth in whatever way is safe and viable for you right now in this moment, whatever your circumstances, that's enough. And just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Your nervous system will feel that that's where you're placing your energy and your intention.
That is such good advice. Oh my God. Yeah. Just that you can build it up slowly. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. Like, oh, I don't have time or whatever to do my passion, or that's such beautiful advice. And I love what you said about it's constricting your life force energy, because yeah, that's also massively was part of my journey. Just I'm sure so many people as well in the culture that we grew up in, this like Western capitalist culture, the schooling, it was very like mono focused. So and humans, I feel like we're all just so dynamic. We don't have to just have like one passion, one interest. So yeah, I find finding ways to engage with my passions and interests, and yeah, really, really massively part of this journey.
I had a funny example of this in my just like personal life recently. And I keep bringing in like more and more metaphors, because metaphors have been a huge part of my healing. They're really helpful
They're
to me.
genius.
And so another of them is just moving out of helplessness and into empowerment. That's another way of talking about unconstricting our life energy. So something really, really simple and seemingly small came up in my life just like last week, where I was feeling so frustrated about the state of the home that I share with my partner. And like, it's got piles and it's like, there's messes in certain areas. And I was feeling very, very helpless about it. And in my state of feeling helpless about it, I was like, there's nothing I can do because he won't do X, Y, Z, And so I was stewing on it, and all this pressure was building in my body. I was getting head tension. I'm not proud of this, but what happened is I eventually blew up at him, and we've come to a better understanding now. But part of what I realized was I was just feeling so disempowered to do anything. And so I wasn't taking those actions that were within my own power. because of just this habit of helplessness that lots of us learn in childhood when we're told not to do the things that we feel we want to be doing.
Oh my God, I so relate. I was just sharing recently about like how I was saying like leaving a situation is like self-love, self-care, because I felt so disempowered in the past to speak up. But you know, it can be big things. But I was giving an example of like when I'm on a date and I come to the realization that this is not for me, but I stay too far past that point. The longer I stay past that point, I feel in my body, I'm like, get cold and shivery. This is like how it shows up. And the better, the quicker I get at making the realization and speaking up. But there's like this moment in time where I feel helpless. I don't want to be rude. We're in the middle of eating, like, oh, he's just took my hand. You know, there's all these things where I'm like, I'm not comfortable. My inner child, my inside is like, I want to leave. It's not a bad situation, but it's starting to feel scared because in the past I didn't listen at all to it. So it's like kind of has a bit of a tantrum because like I don't know what she's gonna do. I don't know if we can trust her. So the better I get, and then because I'm not maybe so well versed at like speaking up so directly, it just comes out. I'm like, I'm gonna go now.
Right. That's how if we've been trained since childhood not to speak up, to be polite, to be, quote unquote nice, meaning to ignore our own feelings, then it comes out really messy, and I can completely relate.
I'm gonna go now, and then just leaving. But like I'm like, but I was so proud of myself because I'm like, Jill, like it wasn't like mean or it wasn't disrespectful to anyone. It was actually was so fine, just like so weird and awkward, which is fine. So yeah. And then just like to add to that as well, like having so much compassion, the aftermath of like doing new boundaries or like speaking up, I just really just like, I'm like, I'm so proud of myself. And like ring my friends, like, I'm so proud of myself. And just like, it's like really celebrating yourself like you would to a little baby when they're learning to talk and walk. Just like, wow, like you're amazing. My friends are like, wow, that's so cool. You're amazing. You did that. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, it's so important because in childhood, we probably, all of us who wound up with these symptoms, we probably got a lot of, praise or approval or just acceptance for stuffing our feelings, for doing the opposite, for not being assertive, for being compliant. And so it's super important to give all that affirmation to the new way of doing things.
Yeah. It's true. What a fun journey. And then it gets really fun, right? It's not like serious like work that we're doing. It's like I just feel like God, like if I had written a book about my life like 4 years ago, it would have been so depressing and so sad and heartbreaking probably. And now I just feel like if I wrote a book, it's really been such an adventure and such I feel like just this evolution of like being a human, and just feels more and more tender and profound and more sensitive rather than less sensitive, just more sensitive to like nuances and relationships. So yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like, tell me if you can relate to this. I feel like in my journey with the pain, like the pain started off as the headline of the story and it's winding up as the footnote.
Oh my God, shivers, totally. Because it's like, wow, it's not even important anymore. It's just lost its importance. Yeah, my book would have been all about the pain in the past. And now it's just like, yeah, it's a completely different focus, a completely different experience, which is a greater gift than just if someone came along and just took away all the symptoms.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I so agree. And I still get symptoms. They're nowhere near as debilitating as they used to be. It's like totally night and day. But yeah, I still get symptoms. They're not the headline of my life.
Right. And it's not for me, it's like not confusing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, of course I was really doing a lot before I left Bali and I needed to see my family. It's not confusing why I was like getting headaches and I never got them before. I'm not like on Google all night. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know who to go to for support. I know what practices to use. I know how to like welcome the invitation for change, and it's just
Yeah.
a totally different experience.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I'm some coping mechanism is coming up in me. It's the social anxiety, or it's the suppressing what I really want, when talking to my partner, or whatever it is. And then like, okay, I can have compassion for myself about that, because I learned that habit a long time ago, and let's just give it some space. And
I love that. I love that. And the compassion is also like a softening, and just this softening, just going from such a hard way of living, like such a narrative, such harshness to myself. It's this softening, this opening, this compassion. And then of course, like how you treat yourself is like how you treat others. And
yeah,
um,
that's so true.
yeah, so I mean I can see it in my family relationships also, just like I'm just so much softer and kinder. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm so grateful for that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that I'm becoming a softer, kinder person, and I'm totally on for continuing on that path.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I'm not perfect at it, as my partner will attest, um but yeah, there's a lot more room and space to mess up too. And I don't have to hold it against myself long term.
Right. Yeah, because there's no destination, right? It's just like we're on this path of just evolving into a softer, kinder, um, how did you put it when you were talking about changing? I forget what beautiful words you used, but yeah, it's yeah, it's just a journey always.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Chatting to you has been just a total delight and just really
For
fun.
me too. Thank you so much for reaching out. This is another like amazing part of this journey, again, with like nobody wants pain, but the healing journey brings such amazing things. And this is one of them, like being able to connect with a stranger that you would have never met, who's even in a different country, but we find each other because we're like putting stuff out there about the same kind of journey. And it's just so heart opening to connect and talk. And I learn new things about myself each time I have a conversation like this. It's really cool.
Same. I completely reflect that. What were the words that we came up with? It was shame?
Oh, secrecy, shame, and fear is what I wrote down.
Secrecy, shame, and fear. Yeah, that was a big insight, I feel. And yeah, I just got so much from chatting with you. I'm delighted to have a new friend, and let
Me
me
too.
know. Let's keep in touch. And
Yeah, absolutely. And let me know if you travel to New York. I'd
I
love to show you around Queens.
definitely will. Definitely. And likewise, if you ever decide to come to Ireland or Bali.
Oh, cool. I'd like to go to both those places.
Sweet. Amazing. Well, let's keep in touch. And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for showing up and just like your openness. And yeah,
Thank
so much
you
fun.
yeah, thanks for connecting. And I hope you have a great day.
Yeah, you